Welcome everybody. Welcome all the people who turned up here today and also for the people online. Really welcome International Women's Day event. I'm Maureen Penfold. I'm the managing partner of Moore Kingston Smith. So welcome to our new office at 9 Appold Street. Today's subject is International Women's Day, and the theme this year I think is a pretty good one, which is to fully embrace equity. Now, equity and not equality, because it's all about equity. The campaign this year encourages conversations about why equal opportunities aren't enough. People start from lots of different places, and therefore for real inclusion, you have to actually be able to have them as belonging, and it requires equitable action to get people together, not just equality. So we need to all share that passion and excitement that comes from that, because actually, if you're valuing and supporting completely different mixes of people and differences really working together, I think it is actually a much more exciting place to be, a much more interesting place. You get a lot of diverse thinking, and I think it's a much better environment, certainly something that we really profess here. So the words equity and equality, I thought for those of you who maybe sometimes wonder what that difference is, I'd focus on it because we do use it interchangeably, but there are different meanings, and I think we're all starting to understand that a little bit more. Back a few years ago, we just talked about equality, but I think we focus on equity now as well. So the equality means everyone or a group of people have access to the same resources or opportunities, which is fair in itself. But equity, on the other hand, recognises that each person actually starts from a different place and has different needs. So they have a unique perspective, circumstances and challenges. So you've got to allocate appropriate resources and support to actually enable those people to have the same equality as others in terms of that. So it's really about trying to find opportunities so we have equal outcomes, not just equality together. From a point of view of us here at Moore Kingston Smith, we're on that journey with everybody else. Sorry, my technical assistant here. We've got lots of people on the screen, so I don't like to touch it because it might not work if I do. So we're really the same at Moore Kingston Smith, really working on that change journey. I think we've all got challenges and we're pushing forward. We're really proud that we managed to be, we're 100 years old this year, so everything is about 100 in my head in terms of that, which is quite a big celebration for us as an organisation to be here for that. And there's been a lot of changes over that 100 years. I haven't been here for all of them, quite a lot of them. I'm looking at somebody there who knows, who started here at the same day as me. But it is a sort of journey, and I think it's a constant thing. And I think looking back in terms of the gender issues and the female piece, we had in Kingston Smith, as it was then, the first female partner was actually in 1974. It was somebody, Barbara Ann Furley, which I didn't know. Did you, Karen? No, sorry, Karen started the same day as me.
So, I mean, I think 50 years ago, it would have looked very different, because it certainly did even 40 years ago. When I look back on my own career, I think of all sorts of different things, really. One thing that really sticks in my mind, and this was not at Kingston Smith, is as a sort of 19, 20-year-old going to an interview, and this guy asking me when I was going to have children. And I can remember sitting there, I was so shocked that I just said to him, well, I'm not even married. It was about sort of time. And that stuck in my mind, and that man has stuck in my mind forever. Luckily, I hope today that would never happen to anyone. But I just didn't know what to say, what to do. And that was a topic of conversation. So hopefully it's changed a lot for everybody in today's generation. But it does, one of the ones that sticks in my mind. The other one really was dress. I think it's been an interesting time in how we could dress. When we started at Kingston Smith, you had to wear a suit. No trousers, because, that wasn't coming. Women didn't wear trousers. You had to wear a skirt suit. Now, to be fair, the men had to wear suit and tie, so there's a balance in that bit. But the fact is, it took well into the 80s before we were allowed to wear trousers, the big reveal. And there was a debate. I was a partner at the time. And there was a debate amongst all these people about whether women could wear trousers. I was in a state of shock, thinking, I think I've joined some sort of lunatic partnership here. Yeah, I did, but that's a separate issue. So, and even when we were allowed to wear trousers, we were only allowed to wear suit trousers. I mean, you couldn't possibly wear anything less than a suit. And so when I look today at how the dress is and where it was, but it's just like, why did we have to do that? It was just irrelevant. It was then and it's now. But I think we have come a long way in all of that as well, which I think is a really positive. Another, I think, first for Kingston Smith and More Kingston Smith was that, you know, we had our first female managing partner in 2013, which isn't that long ago, but was also probably pretty good at the time, Julie Walsh. And then I followed on from her sort of in 2016. So we're relatively good at, you know, I think as a firm, we're quite good at that, at sort of making sure that women are included and there is that going on. But again, I think there are still challenges and there's more to go. And I don't know whether any of you picked up some of the things that were in the press today about, you know, International Women's Day, and really a focus on motherhood, really. And that actually the economist at PwC said that the biggest penalty for diversity was the penalty of parenthood, really, and motherhood, and the impact it can have on women, actually, because obviously we have to have the children and the impact that can have. And I think there's a long way to go. Certainly, we've introduced recently lots of family-friendly policies to actually make sure that people can have the right time off, but both whether that's a male or a female, everybody can sort of share these things, and maternity and paternity. And actually, I think that has held people back from their careers, but to be able to make sure those facilities are there. And she was focusing today very much saying, you know, the cost of living and childcare has had an impact on that. So I think there's still a lot to be done, even though we have moved forward. But we do need to collectively, I think, still work on this to make sure that you can have real equity, really, amongst men and women. And again, another one, I think that we have to, that's sort of at one end of our spectrum. At the other end of the spectrum, probably more the one in my life, where I am in my stage of life, is really sort of recognizing the menopause and the impact that can have on women and how it can make people leave the workforce early. So you've got that potential loss earlier on, and then you've got another one later. And I think it was quite good. Again, I saw that the government have actually appointed a new menopause employment champion, Helen Tomlinson, who's taken that role on. And she said that actually businesses, about 25% have actually got a policy, you know, a menopause policy, and how to cope with that, and to educate everybody about what those dealings and to allow for it. So whilst I think it's fantastic and we've come a long way, I think there is still further to go. And really, I think everybody has a role to play in that, really trying to get us to equity. So that's my introduction and a little bit about why I'm quite passionate on this subject. But so now what I'd like to do is introduce my panel, and they will sort of give you their insight, and then we will open the floor up to questions. So first of all, I'll let them each introduce themselves in a moment, but just so you know who everybody is before I go and sit down and join them. We have Nikki Akana, she's Regional Managing Director at Ambitions UK, Europe and USA, and has to be in the USA, so you can see her there on the screen if you want to give a wave, Nikki. So she's joining us live from the US to be part of it here tonight, and we'll be joining in the panel discussion and open for questions. We're also joined by Olivia Walsford, who's the Women's Development Officer and the women's first team coach and player at Leyton Orient Football Club. So I think, you know, really good, another champion for the way women's football is going, which is fantastic. And then last but not least, we have Alison Ring, OBE and FCA. She's Director of Public Sector and Taxation at the ICAEW. So welcome, ladies, and I will move over now and we'll have a sort of Q&A session, and hopefully we can also open up to the floor. So first of all, though, I thought, actually, can I ask you each to do a little bit of your background? So Nikki, if I can just start with you, really, if you can just introduce yourself to the audience, please.
Of course. Hello, everybody from Miami. So I'm Nikki Akanya, and as Maureen said, I am the Regional Managing Director at Ambition, and I look after the US, the UK and Europe. And at Ambition, I think we're in a really fantastic position, having a female Managing Director, which the reason I'm in Miami at the moment, I missed the Global Staffing Conference, and it is still really interesting to me how few women there are at the senior table in staffing companies. And we work very closely with our clients, so we want to be able to help really move the agenda forward. I'm absolutely passionate about ED and and I really like to support females in their careers. And, you know, interesting with your point, Maureen, you know, not everybody wants to get to a senior role, but everybody wants to be able to achieve as much as they can in their careers. And sometimes you may have to tread water, as you mentioned, you know, if you decide you want to start a family, but also that should be an individual's choice, and there should always be an opportunity for a career at the end of the day as well. So I am very much around helping youth on employment as well, and I work on a board for a school in Haverstock, and I really do want to help females progress into their any chosen careers that they have.
Thank you. Thanks, Nikki. So Olivia, over to you to introduce yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Olivia Worsfold, and as already been introduced, I'm the Female Development Officer at Leighton Orient, which is quite unique as it didn't exist 18 months ago. So it was a role that the club introduced because they wanted to bring all their women's football in-house. So traditionally, as with most clubs, they have a women's team, but it sits over there. It wears a badge, and that's about as much as the connection was. And Leighton Orient made a very unique decision to say, actually, no, we want it to be Leighton Orient FC Women. So they brought it in-house, and they brought me in-house to sort of run that and take it on. But unfortunately, I wasn't ready to hang the boots up yet. So not only did they get a female development officer, they got somebody who's still trying to chase the teenagers around on the pitch. And my passion is football. My passion is sport. Since the age of 4, I've just wanted to play football. So many careers. I went to an all-girls school, so I was pretty much the freak of the school. Didn't play netball, and I did try and play hockey. I just found it wasn't for me. And every careers meeting, what do you want to do? I want to work in football. And I got told repeatedly I couldn't because I was female. So I was told I was never going to be a professional player. I was never going to earn any money doing anything in football. And they said, be a teacher. And I want to be a teacher. I just want to work in football. So I compromised a bit, and I learned how to be a coach, and then developed a lot of skills, and then a job in football. So I had great pleasure in popping back to my school a few months ago, just after the fantastic Euro success, and explaining how big women's football was, to say, and you all here can work in football, and it doesn't have to be as a player, and it doesn't have to be as a coach. You can come and be our finance director, you can come and be our catering manager, but actually football has a role for everyone, be it male or female. But don't let anyone tell you that that's not for you. So that's where my passion comes from. I don't want the little girls that I've got a dream to do something, someone say, I'm afraid that you can't do that. So you probably hear me say that quite a lot today. So apologies already for repeating myself.
No, well done. I hope you met your teachers, or the ones that said you couldn't when you went back.
It was the PE teacher who told me I had severely let her down because I did turn down a GB hockey call up because it happened on a Sunday, and I'd already committed to football. That's what I played, that's what I did. And she said, well, that's a failure because you'll never ever achieve anything with a football. So it was nice to see that she was still working there, and I could just remind her what I might have achieved. And I still have ambitions to go on and achieve. You know, I'm not done. My boots might be getting closer to being hung up, but I'm not done in football just yet.
No, I'm sure you'll have a long career from that, I can say. And then Alison, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
So Alison Ring, and my sort of passion really is opportunity, because you know we need a real diverse workforce, particularly in accountancy, to make things better for everyone. And that's my sort of where I've sort of come from. And I was laughing really, Maureen, at your comments about dress wear. So I started my training contract in 1986, and I remember pencil skirts, jackets, etc., etc. And I remember going to work one day, I had a smart pair of trousers on, and another female said to me, trousers in the office? And I thought, oh my gosh, I was really quite taken aback. Thank goodness it has changed since then. There were no female partners in my firm where I worked, one female manager. It was quite a different state of play. And now I've got my 2 oldest children are girls, and they are training to be chartered accountants, and I want to make them have, make the world better so that they have more opportunity, and whether they choose to have children or not, or work or not, whatever they choose to do, that they've got that option.
Yeah, it's about that equity piece, isn't it, really, about everything else. So thank you. So that's our panel. So now I'll start with a couple of questions for you. Alison, if I start with you, really, women are facing discrimination all over the world all the time. Can you speak about a personal experience and how it impacted you, and if you found a solution?
I'm going to tell you a story. So after I trained in practice, I went to work in HMRC. and I was the first accountant to have worked in this advisory role there. And so I was out on an investigation with a tax inspector, and we were visiting a company, and basically their stock provision was it was just ridiculous. So I had methodically gone through, at that time, SAP 9, I don't know if anyone remembers that accounting standard, but it's basically the inventory standard. And I had, carefully, gone through everything. So I said to the chartered accountant, the male chartered accountant on the other side of the table, who was advising the firm, I said, oh yeah, I don't think really this complies with SAP 9. He said, look, darling, I'm not interested in SAP 9. Well, what do you say to that? A professional conversation that you're having. So obviously that really spurred me to, and as I had done, to be professional, objective, because I think if you have that professional credibility, that overcomes everything else. And of course, they got a big tax bill. But anyway, but not because I felt affronted, because actually their accounts were wrong, just to put that out there.
Revenge is sweet is what I would say. But anyway, and then really, Nikki, over to you, if I can ask you the same question, which is about women facing discrimination.
Yeah, interesting. When I managed to work my way up the chain in recruitment and got a senior role, and I was in a board meeting, sat around the table. I was the only female on the board at the time, and it was lunchtime, and it was time for someone to go and get the sandwiches and the coffees. And they said, Nikki, could you go out and get the lunch for everybody? Which I thought was incredibly interesting. And Alison, it was great to hear how professionally you handled your conversation. I don't think I was quite as professional with mine, and reacted quite angrily, which was a learning curve for me as well, about how to deal with conversations in those situations. But I didn't go and get the lunch, as you can imagine, and made sure that, I think for me, it was that inner conversation around, I will make sure that I'm never in this situation again. And I really want to help and encourage other females to be in these positions, so that you've got the strength of numbers sometimes, which can help.
Yeah, I think that sort of thing can happen to a lot of us, and you get intimidated and you just go into default and do it, and then afterwards you question yourself. So you're much better off when you've actually challenged it. So I think that's really good. Olivia, over to you. Really, what's your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I said it. I've had it from a young age. I was the freak at school that played football, but I worked for a Premier League club, and I'm not naming and shaming. And
Later.
Later. And we went to a training event, which I'd already been excluded off because I didn't think I'd be interested, because it was all based around football, which confused me because I worked for a football club. So why would you not be interested? So anyway, I already had that battle to get there, and we were all asked to put on a coaching session, which I'll do. And the head of the academy was stood there and went, it's a shame she's a girl, because I'd have her in here tomorrow. I was right in his earshot. So you've just told me that everything I've produced today is good enough to work in an academy, which doesn't happen. There's been headlines this week about Jill Scott going into work in the academy, and it's one of the first. But I was openly told, you're good enough, but you're female. So what I made sure was that he didn't forget who I was, and I've seen him at an event recently. I was quite happy again to shake his hand, because I just wanted to say, you can achieve, you can overcome it. It was gutted. I remember driving home thinking, well, what can I do? What more can I do? I've already fought to get there. I've fought to get noticed, and I've been noticed, and it still isn't enough.
Yeah, sometimes you have to just shake hands with those people to remind them, don't you?
Shake hands and smile.
Yeah, exactly. It's always usually the best way. So moving on really to this imagination of an ideal world where there was real gender equality everywhere, or equity. What would it look like to you? So Alison, over to you.
It's a very short answer, actually. I think it's not having to justify and not having to be better, but actually to be equal as equal. Because I think many a time I have sort of come across a situation where actually I think my piece of work is as good as a male's piece of work, and maybe it's been overlooked. So I think it's not justifying and being appreciated for actually your own professional qualification or experience or whatever it might be.
So nobody actually seeing the gender, basically. It's not being invisible. So Nikki, over to you really. What would your ideal world look like?
I think it would be equal access to opportunities, so quite similar to what Alison was saying as well. No gender pay gap, which is still living and breathing, as we all know. And having the same opportunity for career advancement as well, which is incredibly important. And equal representation in positions of power and leadership, because I think that's one of the most challenging things that I see. And so if you've got the equal representation, the belief that anything is possible, then that is more likely to be achieved.
Yeah. Olivia.
Don't have much more to add, really. It's the same. It's to be seen. It's to be noticed for what you do, and not to be a tick box exercise. Or we better put a female in there because that keeps people quiet. It's to be recognised because of your skill set, because of your experience, because of your knowledge, and that actually not to make headlines that you're the first female who's doing this, or the first female to get that position, that it's just equal.
Yeah, I think it's that not noticed, isn't it? Really, isn't it? Which is a strange thing to say, but it's just about, it really doesn't matter what the gender, your gender is, of where you are. So then again, moving on really in terms of that, what are the biggest barriers to embracing equity in your own world? Alison, I'll keep the order to keep my life simple.
Again, well, I'm going to be a short answer, really. I think people not being afraid of something being not run of the mill, or people not being afraid of something being a little bit different. If you think about the accountancy qualification, years and years ago, if you're going to do your chartered accountant qualification, you have to be a graduate, etc., etc. It's much better now that that is not the norm necessarily. You've got a wider diversity of pool of such amazing talent. As a result, it's actually much better as a result.
Yeah, I think that inclusive and wider, everybody have it, is the equity opportunity, isn't it, really, I think, on all of that. And Nikki, what about in your world?
I think there's the unconscious bias is very big, actually, and it's something that we do a lot of training on internally so that we can then have an impact with our clients, because people want to recruit people that are like them and they find it easier, and that's never going to help with any kind of diversity and inclusion. And I think also the lack of diversity and inclusion training that there is out there, and I know that's happening more and more in firms, but it should be, to me, a common practice, an onboarding technique, and also regular updates throughout the period of time that you're in a workplace for as well, which I think is incredibly important, because the more people talk about it, the more training there is, the more hopeful understanding there is around there. So the communication piece is so important.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's that understanding and that inclusiveness of, and it's not just about gender, it's about everything, really understanding that people's accents, where they come from doesn't matter. It's actually what they can do, and I think that's really good.
And I think searching from talent pools as well. A lot of people search in quite limited talent pools, so you're not going to get the ability to have a diverse and inclusive workforce because everybody's coming from the same place. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, and I mean, the Institute have got a good initiative on that, really, in terms of reaching out to sort of schools and areas to try and reach sort of other people, haven't they?
Yeah, the initiative is called Rise. I've actually been part of it, and I've found it really, well, in a funny sort of way, I get quite a lot of reward out of it myself, actually, of going to the schools, etc. Because it's just not fair that these people don't have, certain people don't have necessarily the same opportunity. So, yeah. I'd advise everyone to be part of it if you can. Yeah,
well, to be fair, we are actually a partner in it, and a number of people here have actually taken part, and they've said the same thing. They found it quite inspirational. So anyone who's interested, we'll definitely be up for looking into that to help. And that's about actually approaching a sort of a diverse workforce in the starting point. So coming back to you, Olivia, then, in terms of what are the how would you see that in terms of embracing?
Again, it's not being the odd one out. I'm still very much, when we first had our meeting about this event and how it would look, I was in the training ground that day. It's just 40 staff in. I'm the one. It's time for me not to be the one. It's time for it's actually, it's never going to be a 50-50 split in a men's team. I understand that, because there'll be more male players. But it's time for there to be more than the one, and it to be the norm that there are females around a training ground, around the club, and not just sat in the administration roles, because that's traditionally what it is. It's getting there. It's getting there slowly, but it's about, I hate the word brave, because you shouldn't have to be brave to employ the right person to do the job. But unfortunately, in the football world, it is going to take a few people to be brave. And that will break the barriers down for a lot more people coming through.
Well, I think it was interesting. We were talking earlier, and I mean, it's a really, some of these little things like ladies' toilets, you know, it's amazing the little bit barriers, but they are barriers, aren't they?
Yeah,
So,
just
you
the
know.
everyday things, you know, we were sort of having a conversation around facilities that are in the ladies' toilets or that are missing. That's a big barrier. So if you're very new into the football world and you're not comfortable about something like that, you're actually not going to stay in that world. You're going to want to opt out of that pretty quickly. And that's where we need to be better to keep these staff and recruit these staff, and then that will hopefully cause a chain reaction.
Yeah, I think across the piece. So then really sort of turning to individuals, really, what woman has inspired you to push for equity and why? So Alison, I'll start with you again. If that's...
I think there's obviously lots of female chartered accountants who I sort of find quite inspirational. But actually, in the last, I don't know, 10 years or so, I've done quite a lot of mentoring of women, particularly in the civil service. And they have been inspirational to me in that, you know, they haven't realised how talented they are, and having the conversation with them has got, you know, they've then gone on to get promoted or moved posts, and they've sort of realised how good they are. And I think that is the inspiration I get, I think, from those women.
I think that of women we've got to get better at actually recognising that and actually shouting about our own skills, haven't we? I think that is a constant thing that, say, holds back sometimes our success, is that we sort of check a CV and make sure we can do it all, whereas a guy says, I can do that one and I'm in. So yeah. I think it is that another barrier there. So Nikki, probably over to you really. Who's inspired you?
Mine has got to be my grandmother. Back in a time when it was very unusual for women to have any kind of leading roles, it was very much male dominated, and my grandmother set up a fish and chip shop. I'm from Blackpool, so she set up a fish and chip shop in Blackpool, and then built another 3 or 4, and she wanted to have a position of authority to really help some of the other women that were getting paid really poor wages. It was mainly women working in the industry in Blackpool at the time. So she became the first female president of the Fish Fries Association. And I'm sure you didn't even know there was a Fish Fries Association, but there you go. And, you know, she had a lot of misogyny against her, and she was, you know, called quite a lot of names, and a stroppy woman, and all she was an assertive woman that was trying to do good. So massive inspiration and role model to me.
Thank you. Olivia.
Yeah, I'm glad Nikki sort of mentioned family, because yeah, you know, you have those role models out there who've inspired me, you know, my favourite players, etc. But mine is my mum. I'm one of 4 girls. So we're a very female-heavy household, and a lot of people will always assume, and my dad has been a fantastic champion and continues to be for me and how I am with football. But without my mum having to fight battles for me when I needed a team to play for, the school didn't allow girls to play football when I was at primary school, so she had fight number 1. I went to my very first training, you know, holiday training program, 100 kids. Guess the ratio? I was the one. She picked me up every day in tears, because boys in the past to me didn't want me on their team, but she made me go back every day. She taught me how to fight for what I wanted, and that was installed in my 3 sisters, and my sister has 2 daughters. We only produce girls, I think, in our family. So
sounds like you're a force to reckon with, though.
So I think without and had her own battles. She's overcome cancer twice, and you know, she's had her own battles, but still has been this headstrong woman who has fought for what is right at the time for not only her children, her friends. We just said females need to support females. That's so important. We need to bring each other up, because if we're not doing it, why is anyone else going to do it? So I think she taught me, you know, how to promote myself, but how to promote other people and bring them through too.
Yeah, she sounds a powerful woman. That your house must be pretty strong.
Yeah.
So let's not forget the other half, really, in terms of amongst us here, and I'm glad to see so many. So let's have a think about and a view about how men can help to create a more equal world. So again, Alison, I'll start with you.
Say thank you. And then I say that sounds a bit sort of mundane, but I do think if you're in a partnership and if your partner's working, you're both working, your jobs are equally as important. It's not the female's role necessarily to stay at home if the child is ill, you know, whose meeting is more important. I've had those conversations many a time. I've done the mundane tasks many a time. I would love to come home and see my dinner on the table. Thank you very much. And I would say thank you, whatever it was. So, but no, I mean, genuinely, I do think we don't say thank you enough just for mundane tasks. And I think if we all did a tiny bit more, women would have to do a tiny bit less. So I do think women do a lot, are very good at multitasking. Maybe that's a bit of a stereotype, but I do think from my own experience, I can get a lot done. And I sort of think, well, what have you done? Anyway, that's just, but I'm talking about, I mean, that's a generalization.
I defend men in that position because I'm actually in the luxurious position that I have to say, mostly my husband did most of our childcare, and I have gone home to him cooking the dinner and probably haven't thanked him either.
Say thank
so
you.
I think it is a dual piece, I have to say.
That's what I should have said. It should be really, it's the partnership. It's whatever partnership you're in, whether at work as well, recognizing people at work, and we've all got different responsibilities, and just recognizing that and not and saying thank you.
Supporting each other. Yeah. So Nikki, what would you say to that?
Yeah, I think they've got a really crucial part to play, and I think a lot of it's about education. And you know, it's not a good enough excuse to say that you don't know. You know, you've got to get out there and educate yourself as a man, and you speak to you've got females in your life, could be, you know, partners, mothers, daughters, speak to people in your circle. I would also say speak up as well. So, you know, men should call other men out, challenge other men. If there's any kind of sexist language or inequality happening, then men, you know, have got a responsibility, I think, to challenge each other. And I would also say to support females in leadership roles, so actively promote and encourage women to really achieve the best possible things that they can, and really support them to succeed.
Thank you. Olivia, what would you say? I mean, you've got a lot of men you can sort out to help that challenge, don't you?
Recognise. One of the things that when I first started at Orient that meant the world, we talk about the small things, making a difference. I walked in on a Monday morning and one of the first team players went, "You had a fantastic win at the weekend." I followed it on Twitter. That blew me. That sounds trivial. That sounds nothing. But that's a first team player who said, "We've even scored a goal." I'm not fussed about that. But that man sat there and followed that on Twitter, knew the score, knew the goal scorers, and that blew me away. So it's recognising, see us. They see the women's team now. I go in every Monday, still top of the league. You haven't lost yet. You know, there was a bit of a competition. Both teams are doing really well this season. Neither had lost for a while. And they would have I had a bet with the first team manager who's going to get that first L. We haven't lost yet, the women. I'm just saying.
Just remind them.
Yeah, just to remind them. But it's recognising, it's seeing us, and it's our achievements are the same as your achievements. And it's the support. You know, Nikki's mentioned the support, because that will bring more females through, not maybe just as players, but more females will see, actually, look, someone's working in a club, they've been promoted, we need more roles. And it's the recognition, really, not for our achievements, but for us as individuals and what we can bring to a workforce, whether it's in football or out of football.
Yeah,
females do have a lot to bring, and I think sometimes very easy overlooked for all the reasons that we spoke about today.
And I think it's that really, I think everybody is saying it's just about actually we need to support each other, whether it's male and female, really, isn't it? It's sort of recognising that everybody's got that, the equity part of equality, I would say, in terms of going forward. So really that's in terms of the coverage of the sort of formal part of Helen. But what we'd like to do now is open the floor really and get some cute questions for our panelists from the floor. So can I see if anyone's got a question they would like to pose? Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Alparaja. At lunchtime, I was having a really interesting conversation with some colleagues, and they were saying, we were talking about, do you need a male ally to succeed? And I was just wondering what the panel's views are, because I think we've got the fundamentals in place now in terms of the formal acts, and it's all engraved in stone. But looking at it from a practical perspective, I was just wondering what the panel thought. Do you know, to succeed, you need that male ally to sort of push you forward and to succeed?
Sorry, I was going to
Alison,
leap
carry
in.
on.
Sorry,
Just leap in and we'll go in the same order
sorry.
for response, which keeps life easy.
I think I've never really thought about it before, but actually when you just asked that question, I just thought, well, actually, when I first started in practice and the male partners, although there was obviously the silliness probably in the late 80s, actually one of the tax partner then, he's still a tax partner now, actually, which is, yeah, on reflection, he was such a good ally to me because I was a young sort of female in a quite a male dominated profession really at the time. And I realized how much he did support me and stand up for me. And the same when I went to HMRC, I had a really good male manager who, when I had my first child, said to me, oh, do you want to work? I said, no, I'm going to stay at home. Do you want to work part-time? Oh, I don't know. Do you want to work part-time at home? Oh, okay. Because he wanted to keep me going, and however, because he recognized that I was adding value. So I think maybe you do. I don't know, but I think again it goes back to the point we were saying earlier, we all need to support each other, and you need female and male allies.
Yes. Nikki, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I was just going to agree there with you. I think it's about sponsorship, and that could be male or female, and it's interesting that there's quite a lot of senior females that are out there that can help you, that can give you that hand up, and that will want to mentor you and want to step in and want to help. And there's a lot of men that want to do that as well. So I think sometimes in these conversations, men do get tarred with a bit of that negative brush, but there are a lot of really good people out there trying to help and move the agenda forward.
Yeah. Do you want to come on?
Yeah, for me personally, yes, I did need a male ally. I needed somebody that understood what I wanted to do and could help me with the path. Though I wasn't good enough to be a professional, and the women's game was not professional. And I wasn't going to go off to America. I wasn't in that 6% of female players in the whole country, in the world, sorry. So I needed that male ally to help me. However, now you need both. You need the support from both male, female to help you progress, definitely.
I think the point is you need an ally, don't you? I think we all do. We all need some support in life, don't we? Wherever that may come from, be it in our work or our home environment, I would say, in terms of that, whether it's male or female. Are there any other questions on the floor? There's a couple on the panel on the IT.
Thank you. I was just wondering whether post-pandemic and with the increase in home working, has that helped or hindered the cause of equity?
Well, I worked at home when I worked for HMRC for the majority of my career there. I was really lucky because it was sort of pre when it was really the norm. So that really helped me progress and juggle family life, I suppose, really. So but the thing, funny enough, I think the thing post-pandemic, what I worry about a little bit is the support that I can give to my younger members in my team, who I think, and I mean, I value them being in the office, and I will come into the office because I want to support my two teams, and I will probably come in every day because I want to support particularly the younger, who may be less experienced, because I think you need that support in how, I don't know how you pick things up, but bit by osmosis. So I don't know if it's changed things particularly. Maybe it has made things a bit more equal in terms of caring responsibilities, maybe.
Nikki, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question, actually. I think it's interesting that during the pandemic, there's a lot of research to show that women took on the bulk of the responsibilities for those people that had childcare. They were the ones that were in charge of the homeschooling, even though they were working as well. I think that's really interesting. I think, though, in some ways, it's actually helped the male population as well. And I know particularly for Ambition, there's a lot of my guys that have got kids, and previously they probably would have felt a bit awkward saying to me, can I drop off, pick up today? Whereas now it's not even a conversation. They drop off, they pick up, they might run to a meeting at school in the daytime. So I think it's really opened things up, so it's been a positive in some respects, but there has been negativity, I think, for some of the drain on female time during that period of time.
Yeah, do you want to go?
Yeah, I was in a completely different role during the pandemic, and I think with other females, they sort of saying actually it opened up their partner's eyes, their husband's eyes, to what they do. And obviously in the pandemic there was a lot more to do, the homeschooling, etc. So it might have helped with that realization about saying thank you, about cooking the dinner. So obviously in my job it doesn't help working from home, because there's not, you know, there's not so much football coaching I can do. I need to be out and about around people, but I think it definitely maybe it was an eye-opener for some households, and how they maybe split it equally to allow, you know, it's okay for dad to drop off at school or to pop out in lunch for an assembly. I think it's definitely helped open people's eyes up.
Yeah, I think the flexibility that was brought to our world compared to where we were, which was a very stringent, certainly our business was a sort of it wasn't probably 9 to 5, it was probably a stretch on that, but was very office bound, very sit at your desk, sort of a lot of presenteeism. I think the flexibility that it's brought now, we have sort of flexible, so not flexible hours, we have sort of core hours, and people can work around it, and they come in, they work at home, they work everywhere. And I do think for the next generation, I really hope that is going to help, because I think that the joining up of both parties, both male and female, both engaging with the children, doing the school runs, but not feeling guilty about it. You just fit it, you can be more flexible around it all. And I think I do, you know, believe that will enable people to sort of be able to have the joy of a career and children at the same time, because for those of you who've been through that, you know, that guilt bit about whether you're at work or whether you're at home can be quite a burden when you're doing that. And when you can actually have a much more flexible way of thinking, everybody around you is being flexible, whether that's with their families or going to the gym, I think I'm hopeful that is going to help on this journey for the future, would be my take on that point. Okay, so oh, there's more questions. Can we have one more? I've been getting timed out over there. So Karen, I've got to give you the mic. No, I hope not. Yeah. We started work on the first day together as trainees.
We did.
And we were the only women.
We were.
Exactly.
We were. And we won't talk about any discrimination that we might have suffered.
No, not here. Not in public.
Yeah, I'm thinking of one person particularly, but why? Anyway.
No naming and shaming.
No, I won't. I was wondering about the point that was made about the ICAW and accounting generally becoming more equal in terms of numbers. I went to a conference at the ICAW, I don't know whether it's 4 or 5 years ago, and you look around the room and it's still predominantly white middle-aged men. So on what basis do you say that, please?
I would love to disagree with you with some facts and figures. I have to say, last Tuesday, I was very privileged to be invited to the worshipful company, the livery company of chartered accountants. So I thought, well, very exciting. I'm going to go along to Draper's Hall. And I did look around. Fortunately, I was sat next to a really great bunch of female accountants as well. But I did look around and think, it is a little bit still white, male and stale.
And it still is, I think. Yeah.
But I mean, I think it's more than 50% of students are female. It's just then what I want to see is more people at the livery company, more females. I want to see more females in senior positions, so that then you know, my girls can look up and say, that's who I want to aspire to be, you know, if they want to do that, that is. But I mean, there's loads of initiatives. We've still got a way to go.
I would say, I go around and about in the city, and nearly every dinner I go to is a bit like that, and I don't disagree. But I really believe passionately, if you look at what's happening in the generations to come, that's where it will change. You can't change something overnight. We are the makeup that we started with are the people in these positions now, and there wasn't an equal balance. So how could you possibly be equal? It maybe could be a little bit more equal, but you know, we've got to keep going. But I do passionately believe as people are coming through, and as the younger generations are coming through, they've grown up without this issue. They don't think there's an issue, so they're not allowing an issue. And I think that the Institute is trying to embrace that. But, you know, and I think that and most of the city institutions as well. And I think it goes beyond just the gender point. It's about trying to, because they're also a very type of style and background of where people have come from. And I think it's a big picture to that. So I'm confident that the future is brighter. The next generations that are coming, and some are here today, beyond us, are not going to let it continue and will be pushing from the bottom up. And I think it will change, would be my take on it. Okay. So I think really that just leaves me to thank my panelists. Nikki, thank you so much for joining us from the US. That's really nice. And thank you for, Olivia's got a football coach. Is it training tonight? Training tonight.
First team train on a Tuesday.
So she's got to keep going. And thank you very much to Alison. So thank you to the panel and thank you all for coming. And so please join us now for a drink and a nibble and the sort of catch up on all things equity. And enjoy International Women's Day.